One more
Sarah,
time.
that's too quick.
Way too quick.
Sarah Harmer.
Oh,
I wish
so
that
good.
album of hers hadn't come out just when it did. That would have been fun to see touring.
Ah.
That came out just before the pandemic.
Yeah. Super
Which I gather is over.
Right.
Hello.
Hi. How are you? Are you okay? We are not amazing. But we're doing okay.
No, you know the thing about swans?
What?
Elegant in the Zoom screen. Underneath, they're going.
That's us underneath. Yeah, we're not doing great. We'll be okay.
Emma, that's beautiful.
Emma's.
I was hoping it was going to be an ant, but it's beautiful.
It's a butterfly, and it's amazing. Yeah, things are pretty tough. So, what's new with us? Our kids are now no longer in school.
Dr. Jacobs knows how to do a crossbow draw.
Oh, yeah. That's better news. So the kids are no longer in school. We had to pull them out because of the whole no mask thing. Life is complex. But yesterday, Smith and I started the Smith-Jacobs canoe season. And it was glorious. So this person over here, in a previous parallel lifetime, was a professional canoe kayaker person who was the instructors and all of the impressive things that go with that. And there are some very cool photographs of Smith with hair.
Under helmet
doing all sorts of very cool whitewater kayaking and canoeing. And so kayaking and canoeing is a big part of our family. And so yesterday we did the speed, which is not the part that we did is not usually a part that you can canoe during most of the season because there's not enough water, but it was really fun.
Yeah, it was kind of fun. They opened the Guelph Lake Dam, and so the river, which this time last week was running at 1 cubic meter a second, was running at 25 cubic meters a second. So there's more.
So there was more water, and it was very fun. Don't do it.
There was a lot of smiling.
Unless you're professionally trained.
Yeah. Form a line. We'll come on out.
Yeah. Anyway,
that would be more fun.
It was fun.
Oh, that's even my onside.
There we go. Oh, look at that. Thanks, Ava. That's great. Yep. So just an announcement here that we have extended the deadline for the EPP. Of course, life is challenging for us, and we have all of the privileges in the world.
Something when you...
So life, is challenging for us, and we have all of the privileges in the world, including not having to go to school. And so, yes, there were lots of requests, and good for you for recognizing early that you weren't going to make that deadline. And so thank you, first of all, for, keeping us posted on what's happening in your life and what's getting in the way. And of course it's getting in the way. So we'll go till Monday. We don't want to keep facilitate accumulating all of these things, right? So we will kind of, we talked about it, and we tried to figure out, based on what you were asking for and all of this stuff, what would be a good way to make sure that you finish this semester for reals, and also that you can put in some of the time that you need. So Monday at 10 p.m. is the new deadline for everyone, and you're very welcome, of course. Okay. What else? I'm going to check to see if any... Oh, sorry. Go back here. There we go. Somebody's drawing Among Us underneath the video feed. Okay. Perfect. There's an ant.
Oh,
look.
Thank you.
There we go. Well done. Super good.
I should bring it to class sometime. Margaret Atwood has drawn ants for me before.
Yeah.
And they're very good.
Uh-huh. Okay. And then this butterfly is stunning.
Yeah.
It's really good. And
there's a dolphin
in front of the canoe. And there's a dolphin in front of the canoe. It's perfect. Okay. Awesome. Great. So, shall we screenshot and move on with today's plan?
Or just stay here.
Or just stay here and hang out. I kind of want to do that.
I feel that.
I'm not really feeling it today. We got it? We're going to do it?
You got it.
Okay.
You are, as they say, a Richardson's ground squirrel.
I am a Richard, in that I'm going to stay underground and hibernate through all of
this. And then you're going to come up! And you're going to go down. When you rewind this, it'll make sense.
It'll make sense.
And it'll be so funny.
Okay. going to clear now, okay?
All right.
Ready? Oh, but Michael's like doing something in the bottom
Where'd our
there.
recording logo go?
Okay. There we go. All clear.
I don't see it anymore. There it is. Good.
There it is.
I'll just accept it's happening.
It's happening.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to dive into some of the endotherms, and we'll talk about the cool extreme ones instead of the usual ones, but that again allows us to understand sort of what the limitations are physiologically of all of these different systems, these different adaptations. Yeah, that's a plan. But first, let's kind of get some basics. So we've got our hare, Arctic hare, and our polar bear. And what I'd love, let's just do it one at a time if you don't mind. And I'll say like on 3, you can stamp which one. So let's just get a stamp ready. And for higher surface area to volume ratio on 1, 2, 3. It's okay.
You guys are like
super keen. Okay. Okay, moving on. Who's gonna lose heat faster? Okay.
Wabbity bobbity 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 bop.
And higher metabolic rate per kilogram. Excellent. Okay. Are you all good with the sort of reasons, the rationale for that? Like if you had like a short answer question to explain the relationship between surface area to volume ratio and higher metabolic rate, would that be cool? Or would you like a little quick rundown? Higher metabolic rate. Somebody's given me an X. I'm going to interpret that as a little rundown would be helpful. Are we good with that? Yeah? Okay. I think so. Yes, check marks. I see him. Okay, good. Awesome. Okay. So, and this, like, you know, again, feel free to rewind this. Rewind.
Yeah, rewind.
In the olden days,
like
we used to rewind a tape. And play this several times because it may take a little while, but basically, the quick rundown is if you were to kind of take a look at the surface area of the hair, it would be X number of units, right? Let's just say, you know, 1 or 2 units, okay? And the volume that it covers is quite small overall, absolute, right? But that ratio between the volume that surface area of its skin covers or the fur covers to its actual volume is quite a bit bigger than what's going on with the polar bear. The polar bear has a lot of volume, right? A lot of inside. And the surface area to volume ratio is much lower, okay? And that can be like a little tricky to kind of wrap your brain around. So what I want you to think about is a dice and a Rubik's Cube. Is that okay? Are those like, you've got what I mean? You know, dice when you're going to like play a board. Ava's drawing it. Thank you.
Yahtzee.
Ava, you can just keep on drawing because it's very helpful. Okay, so a dice has 6 surfaces, right? And say they're 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter. So you would do 1 centimeter squared times 6, and you'd get 6 centimeters squared, right? Or 6 square centimeters. To 1 centimeter cubed, right? That's your volume. Super good, Ava. So that's your volume, your ratio, right? 6 to 1. And what we've got here with the Rubik's Cube is very, very different, right? So we've got 3, 1 centimeter times 1 centimeter plus 1 centimeter plus 1 centimeter, 3 centimeters across by 3 centimeters up, right? That's 9 times 6, right? For each of the surface areas to 3 cubed, which is 27. So it's a very different ratio. And you can kind of walk yourself through this. Like, I don't want to just give you all of the answers because I feel like if you figure it out in your head, you'll use like words that make sense to you. So just take a look at the ratio between these two things, and you'll see that actually there is more exposed surface area in the smaller dice than there is in the Rubik's Cube, okay? And so the hair is like the small dice, if somebody wants to do a line connecting them to the dice, and the polar bear is like the Rubik's Cube. Thank you. Super good. Okay. So they maintain their body temperatures at more or less the same temperature, like around 37 degrees, right? So in order to be able to keep that temperature at about 37 degrees Celsius, the metabolic rate of the hair is going to have to be higher, right? Because they're an endotherm, they're getting their internal, they're controlling their internal temperature through their own metabolism. And the polar bear is losing less heat because it has less surface area to volume ratio. And so it's able to conserve more heat. So it has it doesn't have to produce as much per mass unit as the hair. It probably produces more energy than the hair, absolutely, but not per kilogram. Okay? Does that help? Do you have any questions about that?
If you're interested in this later on, I just in the chat posted a video about how to make an elephant explode.
Amazing.
That has some of the biophysics of life as a fleshy cube.
Yeah.
So from the dice to the Rubik's Cube as a fleshy thing, and how it's about generating and shedding heat.
Yeah. Good.
Physics. It's always around. It's great.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. So that's where we get that, right? So the hair is going to lose heat faster. It's going to have a higher metabolic rate per kilo. The absolute metabolic rate is going to be higher, of course, for the polar bear. Okay. Great.
Good impromptu sketching.
Not bad. That was great. Total collaborative teamwork there. So good. Okay. So what do endotherms do in the cold? The answer is lots of different things, right? Callum, die. Yes, ultimately, they can die. But in the absence of death.
Before that.
Not
skip to the end.
Before that, first they can try to find someplace warmer. They can try to generate more heat. They can allow certain parts of their bodies to cool. And they can allow their entire body to cool. These are kind of carefully, right? These are kind of the high level approaches. And within that, there are multiple ways that those types of things can be achieved, right? So for example, try to find someplace warmer. You can do that multiple ways. You can be like super extreme and ow.
Sorry.
Oh no, sorry.
You can huddle up and crush your foot.
and crush your co-instructor's foot. Or, sorry.
Let's find
that was
warmer
surprising.
Yeah.
Okay.
To me as well.
Yeah. So you can try to find someplace warmer by huddling up together. You can be super extreme and like leave, migrate, and then pretty much anything in between, right? So same goes for all of these other different possibilities. To generate more heat, so thank you so much whoever shared that shivering, because that was really good. But there are other alternatives.
You can be muscular. You can move around. So the idea of like keep your body moving. We talked about it with our boys in the backyard skating all winter. Keep moving. Start moving. And then they shiver.
When they don't move.
Yeah.
Non-shivering thermogenesis is something that we'll get into in a few minutes. So we'll tell you a little bit about some brown fat and how all of that works.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, you can generate heat through digestion too, right? Which is a kind of byproduct of another process that also can be beneficial or helpful in terms of generating heat. So brown fat. And in order to tell you about brown fat, we obviously have to tell you a little bit about white fat. And I think most of us are familiar with white fat. It's the tissue or the type of fat that we carry around in places that become a little bit more obvious as we age. These are basically endogenous storage, energy storage reserves. And when you look at a white fat cell, it is predominantly built for storing fat. So inside the cell, it's this huge droplet of fat, and then sort of all of the other bits of the cell are kind of forced up to the side or the walls there. And what this is a way of storing energy, and so it's really, really important for animals.
Excuse me.
And are you okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. And we also store fat. We need to be able to store fat to be able to get us through important events, lifetime events, where we need more energy. So all of that fat that's in there is metabolized by your body in order to keep your muscles running and things like this. Brown fat is a little bit different in the way that the cell is constructed and also in the way that it's used. And so we still have these sort of bits of fat that are stored within the cell, but they're stored in these cells that have lots and lots of mitochondria. And they're stored in smaller droplets distributed throughout the cell. So this increases the surface area to volume ratio of the fat droplet itself, making it way more accessible to all of these different mitochondria. And what happens is that they get used directly in order to fire up mitochondria that produce an impressive amount of heat very, very rapidly. The fat that's being stored in your white fat cells isn't used directly within the cell like that. It actually gets mobilized and brought to places that in your muscles that are going to be using it. So a totally different sort of way of using these fat molecules. Basically, your brown fat, and we do have some, is used sort of for targeted region-specific heating of vital organs or vital places within your body that need to keep warm without shivering. And so if we take a look at this kind of creepy baby, but here's creepy baby on the left-hand side.
I think that's baby Boomhauser.
Oh no.
Yeah. From
Okay.
King of the Hill. I think that's Boomhauser
Is that
as a
it?
baby.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So creepy baby. The point of this slide is to basically suggest that throughout your lifetime, the amount of brown fat that you have changes. And again, it's a response to a change in your surface area to volume ratio, right? As a baby, you're much more like the hare, less like the polar bear.
You're a small, fleshy
You're a
cube.
small thing that has a much bigger surface area ratio to volume, right? So what's happening is you're losing a lot more heat. And so you need to have these places that are being kept warm for, as long as possible so that you don't lose too much heat. So they stay around so there's brown fat around your kidneys as well as some of your sort of central core organs. As you mature, you lose quite a bit of that distribution of brown fat. It's no longer maintained. Your volume gets a lot bigger. Your surface area to volume ratio declines, and so you don't need to maintain those brown fat tissues. They're pretty expensive to maintain. They've got lots of energy, lots of things going on. So over time, your body volume compensates and kind of takes over, but there still are little pockets of brown fat. Okay. Are we good?
Here we go.
Okay.
No outstanding questions.
None? We're good? Wow. Okay.
An expression that someone wishes they were an endotherm. Which maybe speaks to their thermostat? I don't know.
Maybe. Okay. So, so some of the ways that endotherms can get through periods of being very cold is to control, in a very controlled way, decrease body temperature so that they don't need to burn as much energy, and they can actually exist at a much colder temperature. Now, obviously, they'll be giving up some things like being able to walk around and eat. And so there are some, cost benefits that have to happen. But in order to, so this type of like dropping your body temperature for a period of time can range from a very short period of time, and we call that torpor, to a very long period of time, and we call that hibernation. And, of course, it's a gradient. Not everything does pure hibernation, and not everything does pure torpor, right? And there are these beautiful little gray areas between, which I like to explore all the time because it kind of challenges me to think about, the different mechanisms and the differences.
But you've been exposed to things that are doing torpor all the time. If you've grown up with a bird feeder outside of your house in the wintertime and you live in the northern hemisphere, those birds, when they're not feeding and replenishing their energy with those nice greasy seeds at your feeder, they're going through torpor to some degree for some amount of time overnight.
That's right. And hibernation, it can look very much like torpor, but because of its long duration, there are some physiological differences, some important ones that we do need to point out. Okay. So here we go. Kind of just stacking them up side by side, where we have a bird that would go through, like a hummingbird would experience torpor every night because food is not readily available. And so they've got to come up with some way of decreasing the metabolic cost just to be able to survive the night, right? And then we've got hibernation, which is these like extended weeks long or months long periods of reducing metabolic needs in the context of low access to food, right?
And I love the fact that for the hummingbird, that's when we're talking about overnight, in the last example that I gave, it was overnight in the wintertime that we're talking with a chickadee or a sparrows that are sitting here all winter. But that's overnight.
Just all
anytime.
The time.
They're so small.
So tiny.
That they just need to shut it. If they stop, they have to really stop.
Yeah. Okay, for torpor, usually found in small endotherms with very high metabolic rates, right? High metabolic rate means that they need to eat a lot of calories. Usually there are periods throughout the day where access to calories is reduced, usually at night. And so torpor is an excellent way of getting through those physiologically. They are short periods, very often short periods. They require minimum food stores, rapid body temperature drop, right? So under normal conditions, it would be catastrophic.
Mm-hmm.
They can drop 10 to 20 degrees Celsius within an hour. So a decreased metabolic rate. They reheat by shivering and burning fat. So in the morning, they wake up, they shiver, they burn fat, and their body temperature goes right back up. Hibernation is usually seen with mammals with a range of metabolic rates. And then the hibernation profile really does change quite a bit, depending upon if you're a small-bodied mammal or a large-bodied mammal. So large-bodied mammals, for example, don't go into deep hibernation. Smaller-bodied mammals do go into deeper hibernation. And we'll throw that question at you as a kind of think about it kind of question. So hibernation is usually for longer periods. It does require larger energy stores, so you have to come up with some way physiologically, either within your body or like right next to your body, figuring out some way of like gaining access to food. It's characterized also by a decrease in metabolic rate, decrease in breathing, decrease in heart rate. And very, very important is the long-term physiological consequence of hibernation compared to torpor is that there is this massive depletion of oxygen availability to the body in hibernators. So, torpor, not so bad, but because there's a decrease in breathing, decrease in heart rate, decrease in circulation, decrease in metabolism, all of those things, the entire body in a hibernator is very much oxygen deprived. And so one of the first things that has to happen before shivering is simply a reoxygenation of the body. And so that first step is usually hyperventilation or panting that happens in order to oxygenate the body. And then shivering can happen, and then fat burning can happen. So in brown fat, these are just kind of like the stats of brown fat. And some of the differences. I guess I should have put that with the other slide. Maybe we'll switch it around for when we post the slides because I feel like it would make more sense. So basically with non-shivering thermogenesis in the brown fat tissues, obviously they are more numerous and smaller droplets, right? And that just makes it more readily available. There's a higher number of mitochondria in those cells. Lots more vascularization. Obviously, if you're going to, want to sort of increase metabolic rate or increase sort of the metabolism of things, you want to also distribute the heat in a way. So vascularization is increased. And it is responsible for the non-shivering thermogenesis. Do we have a question?
Confirmation questions. When they reheat, is that, and this is birds, or the overnight, is this brown or white fat that they're burning?
Ah, yeah. So they do have brown fat that's going on for sure. And the shivering though, it's mostly through shivering. That's through muscle contractions, right? That would be using white fat. But we have to take a look. I'm not sure if there's any study that's looking specifically at the relative amount of brown fat in hummingbirds compared to sparrows. I would predict that hummingbirds would have a bit more relative to their body size.
Just because there's so much more.
Yeah, but exposed. I'm not sure if anyone's actually looked at that yet.
And then final one about bears. They hibernate for a few months at a time, correct?
Yep. Yes, they do. Yes. Bears. Not all bears. So polar bears do not. And so that, again, is like something super interesting to kind of think about. But before we get into polar bears, we want to introduce you to ground squirrels, because really cute, but also amazing physiologically. Just absolutely fascinating. So there's the Richardson's ground squirrel. There's the striped ground squirrel here. You can see it's super stripy. They're all kind of mixed up here. Don't worry too much about which one is which. They all do these really remarkable hibernations. You can see this is like a sort of diorama of what their living conditions are like. So they live in the ground, in these dens, sort of below the freezing points or the freezing line of the land. And they go through this hibernation that is remarkable in terms of its extreme temperature drop. Here's somebody holding a live Richardson's ground squirrel that is in this hibernation sort of state, right? And it kind of feels a bit like a hockey puck. They do not feel alive really at all. And so if you find like a mouse or something in your basement or in someone else's basement and it's like hibernation time, before you throw it in the garbage, just maybe ask if it's not just hibernating, because you never know. Sometimes it's really hard to tell the difference. But here's something that I hope you'll really get interested in, and these are the temperature profiles of these very adorable ground squirrels. They're bananas, but I think what we'll do is we'll just kind of keep quiet for a moment and get you to just kind of look at this. And then what I'd love for you to do is get your stamps or your pencils or whatever ready, and share with us what you think might be bananas. But just like, let's hold off for a few seconds so that everyone can kind of appreciate it. So.
Outside of pigs. Apparently.
Okay. I had no idea. Okay, so what questions do you have about these graphs, or what areas are you focused on? What areas seem kind of remarkable to you? Is there anything that's confusing? Is there anything that you want to talk about? Eva wants to talk about the timeline. So does Pushpinder. Ari wants to talk about those peaks.
The spiky peaks.
Yeah. Rebecca wants to know what's going on in that blank space. Super good.
Researchers are on vacation.
Yeah. Amazing. Yep. So does Ruby. Okay. Cool. Really good. Yeah. Excellent. Okay. So yeah, to me, this is like all sorts of questions that kind of pop up, right? Let's kind of break it down. So before we do that, though, what I will do is we'll give you one of these polling questions that'll kind of help concentrate a little bit, or kind of focus some of your attention onto what's going on. So here we go. I'll launch the question, but keep this slide there. Is that okay? And then we'll put this question here for the recording so that you can see it when you see the recording. Can you go to the slide and tell me what the answer is? Cool, thanks.
I just want to make an animation.
Of what?
Soil temperature and put it under. Because it's
beautiful, right?
Sits on it.
Yeah.
They're the temperature of the soil. It's happening way earlier than you think. You touched the center.
I touched it. There we go.
You touched it.
Okay. So we'll just leave it open for another few seconds.
What percentage are we at?
We're at 60%.
That's a pass.
It's a pass. Folks are tired. I get it. It's fine. But maybe 10 more seconds.
Oh, that's a good question in the chat.
What's that?
Would it have negative consequences, or what consequences would it be if this hibernating, if this was woken up?
Yeah.
Suddenly.
Okay. Okay. There we go. Share results. So most, 49%, 50% of you got the correct answer. Well done. If you didn't get the correct answer, and you want to kind of work through it, just make, like, there are lots of ways of looking at these data and interpreting them, right? And some of them have to do with correlation and causation. Some of them have to do with reversing of the independent and the dependent variable, things like this, right? So just kind of use that as your guide to kind of figure out why the correct answer is C. Okay. There we go. Okay, so there's a lot going on here, and certainly the spikes are something to notice. And also, down here, it's almost at 0 degrees, if not at 0 degrees, body temperature. That's extreme. Like, in a hibernator, I mean, I don't know what average temperature would be, but like, I wouldn't expect it to be lower than 10 or 15 degrees Celsius. And yet ground squirrels can go to 0. which is extreme. Now, they're not frozen. The tissue isn't frozen. So they aren't freeze tolerant. But it is a very extreme case of metabolic decline or body temperature decline. But there are these like spikes, these momentary, very, very short duration spikes, which is interesting and has caused quite a bit of curiosity and research to take a look to try to figure out why that is. And so from these observations of these temperature profiles, there have been some very cool hypotheses about why. And so you can see here, it's called periodic arousal from hibernation. And the leading sort of, hypothesis as to why that might be actually has to do with immune function. In order to clean out your body or to make sure that, you don't get disease, your body needs to be at a certain temperature for your immune system to function. And hibernation can cause the accumulation of toxins as well as parasites or other types of disease or bacterial infections. And so what the ground squirrel seems to be doing is periodically raising its body temperature. It's not like it gets up and walks around and goes for a meal, right? But it's just kind of there. Body temperature spikes and then comes right back down in just enough time to be able to do a bit of a clean sweep of its body, and then go right back into the extreme conditions of its hibernation. It's really cool, right?
I think it's pretty amazing.
It's pretty amazing.
I love the fact, I was saying, we were talking as you were doing the poll, that I love the fact that in their presentation of that data, that disregarding kind of the slightly different effects on the males and the females and the younger ones, that they plot out the soil.
Yeah.
And that soil, as it just sits right underneath. I mean, those squirrels are tracking the soil temperature. And so their burrows are clearly, they're building them to get underneath the frost layer. And then
that's it.
That's kind of it.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Which makes us think of Rick Mercer.
Again. So Rick Mercer likes to get into trouble and also likes to think about hibernators, large-bodied hibernators. Now, these are not ground squirrels. These are large-body hibernators, which physiologically is a very different thing. So let's notice some things and also enjoy a pretty funny Rick
So this segment's edited slightly. It's a longer segment, but when you get you can go and watch the whole thing on your own, but he's in Algonquin Park this time. So that is an MNR scientist, Dr. Martin Aubard, who is an emeritus scientist now. As you can see, he's kind of end of career, but he is a Guelph graduate, both master's and PhD.
Yeah. So maybe one of the things that you noticed is how awake the mother was before they used the jab stick. And that's because a large-bodied hibernator has a very different physiological profile than a small-bodied hibernator. A large-bodied hibernator, for example, doesn't experience this dramatic drop in body temperature or a dramatic drop in metabolism and all of the things associated with it. And that has a lot to do with the physiology of warming up once you lose body temperature. Anything can lose body temperature. It's whether or not it can ramp up the heat production fast enough in order to be able to, go into sort of a full metabolism profile and basically, start circulating things without causing any damage to the tissue. And large-bodied mammals can't do it. They can't have their temperature drop so low because they don't have the ability to raise their body temperature up that high again, because of the fact that they've got this big volume compared to their surface area, all of those things. It's just not possible to get that large volume back up to the temperature that they would need to go in order to be able to start walking around and eating and things like this. So they actually experience what's called a shallow hibernation compared to deep hibernation. So small-bodied endotherms have deep hibernation. Large-bodied endotherms that hibernate have a shallow hibernation. So everything's just shallower in terms of the drop. There still is a drop, it's just not as deep. And then, adding on to that complexity, is that polar bears do not hibernate. And there are probably some, kind of obvious reasons, but what kind of comes to mind? What would be the reason or a reason for why polar bears do not hibernate? What comes to mind, or what question do you have?
Pop it on that space there or in the chat. Can eat in the winter. Yep.
Very good. Yep. What else?
They're mainly aquatic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm busy right now.
Lots of food in the winter. Yeah. So the winter time is not metabolically challenging for polar bears. Exactly. There's lots of food. That's when they're eating. And in fact, it's the summertime that's more challenging from a metabolism perspective. Keeping cool in the summer is hard, and finding food in the summer is hard. And so they don't hibernate because that's when they're able to get food, and they're perfectly happy, walking around in the cold. So they do den, though. The only the females with cubs, the ones that are about to give birth, do go into a den that they build. It's like a snow cave. And the reason why they're doing that is, yes, they do kind of conserve their energy because they're giving it to their cubs in the form of milk. And so but it's not a hibernation, it's a reproductive activity. So the females den when they're giving birth, and they stay in the den for a few months with the cubs to get them nice and fat. But that doesn't have anything really to do with the temperature. The den itself provides all sorts of protection from predators like other polar bears. And so it's a very different process. Yeah. Super good. Okay. So nothing. And that to me is really interesting, right? We have a whole bunch of hibernators, especially within, the clade of bears, and the polar bear is the exception. The exception exists because of the environmental context, and the adaptations, right? The evolutionary story. So to me, it's just delightful to go and see where the exception is and to start exploring why that might be. So if we take a look, at sort of heat loss of a polar bear, we can see, we can see that they are highly effective. And so what this is showing you is the hot spots of a polar bear. And we can see that most of the hot spots are here in the eyes and out the mouth, a little bit going on in the feet, where they're in close contact with the ground or with ice. But everywhere else is pretty insulated, pretty protected as much as it possibly can be, with its thick layer of fur as well as its thick layer of fat. So these things are wonderfully designed in order to be able to survive in really cold temperatures. So it's actually warm temperatures that can present a threat to the physiology of the individuals. And then just some of them, like that I just touched on now, but kind of a little bit more of a comprehensive list. They've got really thick fur. Actually, do you want to continue this? I'll take this. I'm sorry.
So they have very thick fur, which we talked about. And we've talked about a little bit about when we talked about some of the other mammals, Arctic mammals like the Arctic hare and the ermine and these ones that are changing coat color. But these ones have even a further adaptation. So the white color, and a super, super dense undercoat. And then the guard hairs are actually hollow. And that's the cross section that you're looking at right here. And that helps to trap and retrieve heat that's lost from the skin. And so it keeps it in a kind of an insulative layer underneath and around the dense undercoat. The skin, and that's what you're looking at here, is dark colored. And so that dark skin is going to help absorb energy, any energy that hits it, any solar energy that does hit it when the bears are out and about and if the sun is above the horizon. a thick, fat blubber layer, up to 11 centimeters thick. And then this large size, so a reduction in the surface area to volume ratio. And so the bears are therefore kind of dealing with cold in a bunch of different ways. And so their problem, as Dr. Jacobs was outlining, is not so much like it is for the smaller Richardson ground squirrel or the hummingbird about how to deal with the cold. Their problem is really about how to deal with the heat, because all of these adaptations in the end mean it's going to be very hard for you to be a bear in the summertime. So, the homework for you guys, all of you folks, before we meet again, is to fill in this table. And remember, we talked about at the start of our physiology unit, we talked about whether a response was acute or chronic or occurred in evolutionary time. And we've got different kinds of scales at which that can happen. And so take a look at this, and for the attributes of the polar bear that we've talked about so far and that you know as a burgeoning biologist, try to fill in this table as much as you can for when we meet again on Wednesday. And I see by the clock on the wall that it is past time, and so we will say au revoir, and we will see you on Wednesday. And take care of yourselves.
Yes.
Things aren't easy. So be kind, expect kindness from others, and advocate if you don't get it. We'll see you on Wednesday.
Bye. Thank you.